Hey guys, it's Vanity Ezel. Yes, from a completely different channel. So before I continue, before I tell the story of why I'm doing this video instead of your normal daily YouTuber, don't forget to like this video, comment on it, or what you want, of what deck profiles you want more of, and subscribe to Dev. And if you want to go subscribe to me, go look up Vanity Ezel on YouTube. So yeah. So anyways, Dev is not available right now because he's kind of busy with some pre-engagements. So he asked me to do this deck profile for him. So that's what I'm going to do. So a while ago, someone, I do not remember who, asked for Dev to create a Granblue budget deck profile. And here it is. We are going off the prices of TCG player. This deck on TCG cost like probably less than 20 if I remember correctly. So yeah, let's go ahead and get this started. So first up, the starting Vanguard is Captain Nightkid. It's the basic when wrote upon, draw a card, and then when the quick shield / ticket comes in effect, you get an order basically in like the 5k shield. But for right now, he just does this where he's just a card where you get the draw one when wrote upon, and he looks really cool, which is why Dev chose him as the starting Vanguard because he's cool as hell. And he also looks awesome. Okay, next up we got the triggers. 4 copies of Pirate Ship Handler Palo. So basically the standard draw trigger. You may be wondering why there's a draw trigger being ran in this deck in the first place. That's because like the deck is the deck is extremely aggressive. It mills a lot, but it somewhat lacks a bit of hand power. So we're putting that extra draw in so that you can get that hand power. Note this deck will probably deck out really quickly, but still, it can get that hand. It can be very aggressive. It can be very defensive. You just got to be really smart about it, but this draw trigger benefits a lot. Next up is 4 copies of Night Spirit, the critical trigger. You can really run any type of crit because you can have a total. Because there's 3 different crits. We just chose Night Spirit because he looks cooler compared to like I forgot what the other one was called, but he looks cool compared to that. And then Rough Cheese Banshee, once more another crit, same thing, looks cool. 4 copies, so 8 crit for the aggressive rush beat stick. And then finally the heal, Rick the Ghosty, 4 copies. Not really a choice here. We kind of had to pick this heal unless we wanted to run 12 crit and 4 draws, but what idiots would we be for that? Okay, anyways, onto the actual units with skills. First up is 3 copies of Norman the Ghosty. 10k shield, 7k base, skill, act, rearguard circle. Retire this unit and put 2 cards from your top of the deck into a drop zone, and one of your other units gets plus 10 till end of turn. So this deck kind of focuses on having like a certain number of cards in drop, or like basically over 10 cards in drop. So this card alone gets you 3. That's like 1/3 of that, or I guess like 1/4. I guess if math works like that. So like 1/4 of that is already fulfilled by this card. So that's really useful. It can just power up your units, which means more power, which means the opponent will either have to guard more, or that means if they get a damage trigger, if the attack can probably still hit. So pretty useful all around. 4 copies of Troubadour Cavalier Al FIFO. I butchered that name so much, but I honestly do not care to try. Okay, so skill, auto rearguard circle. When it's placed from hand, if you have 10 or more cards in your drop zone, discard a hand card, countercharge 1, and soul charge 1. That's useful. This deck does a lot of counter blasting, does a decent amount of soul blasting, and your deck's gonna hit like 10 drop zone cards like easy, and that discard's going to be nothing compared to the amount of draws we got. So having that extra ability to countercharge, which the deck counterblasts a lot, which is really helpful to have there, and then the soul charge, which fixes a very certain card problem, that's really helpful. So all around good card, 4 copies if you want. Next up is 4 copies of Skeleton Sharpshooter. I cannot talk today. Skill, auto rearguard circle, or guardian circle. When it retired from Guardian Circle, put the top 2 cards of your deck to drop zone. So it's kind of like a vanilla on Rearguard and Vanguard Circle, but when retired from Guardian Circle, mill 2. That's useful because if it's cost for like, say for example, Troop Shooter, who we just went over, the countercharger, he can fit for one of the grade 3s, and actually he can fit for both of the grade 3s. He basically fulfills the cost of everything. It fills up your drop zone, and in Granblue, having cards in your drop zone gives you plenty of options because you can call stuff from the drop zone to rearguard circles and you get power off them. So having cards in your drop zone gives you power, but they also give you resources to call, and it gives you options. which is really good. So having this card at 4 copies is really useful. Next up is grade 2's 2 copies of Kicking Frangol. Skill, auto rearguard circle. When placed from the drop zone, 2 of your grade 2 rearguards get +4 to end of turn. So this becomes a 13 if you want, and then something else gets +4. There's a reason why we run this. I mean, there's also a reason why we run at 2 copies. You see, because the other countercharger in this deck, we run at 4 copies, and you can only countercharge if you have this thing in your deck. So that's the only reason why we run this. Not really a useful unit, but the deck does so much counterblasting, we don't really have a choice. So yeah, I guess pick up like 2 copies of this guy. He can be okay. He can get like that extra power stack if you need it, really. Plus, you can actually help grade 2s hit force numbers, so actually that is useful. But anyways, on to the real grade 2s. 4 copies of Commodore Blue Blood. My favorite looking one out of this whole entire deck. Skill, continuous rearguard circle. During your turn, if you have a Commodore Blue Blood in your drop zone, it gets +4. That does not mean per copy. That means it's only getting +4. But looking on the bright side, if you have 2 Commodores on your field and there's one in your drop zone, both are at 13, which means they can hit force numbers, they can hit protect and excel numbers, they can pretty much just hit regardless, which is useful because hitting that extra attack without boosting is just also great because you get to keep guardians. Then auto rearguard circle. When its attack hits a vanguard, kill it, draw 2, and then discard 1. So pretty much you get another card in drop zone, you get to draw 2, and then you get to discard another card and put another card to drop zone, which means you get more resources once more, and then you just get to like see that extra 2, which could be helpful. It could be like, for example, it could be a trigger that you may or may not need, which kind of sucks, but you at least have guarding power, like maybe a card to ride into next turn. Who knows? Possibilities are endless, but 4 copies. Next up is 4 copies of Skeleton Bomber. If you're not running this at 4 copies, you are high, because you can't even use its effect if you have... If you're running it at 4 copies, if you're not running it at 4 copies, it's just a vanilla. It has to be run at 4 copies to not be a vanilla. So, act, drop zone skill. If you have 3 or more Skeleton Bombers in drop, counterblast 1, call up to 4 Skeleton Bombers from your drop zone to rearguard circle, and until the end of the turn, all of them get boost, and all of them get +4. So all of them can immediately, so all of them hit 12k, which is awesome, because that means they can hit excel and protect numbers. Maybe not force numbers, but that's okay. But at the same time, they get boost, which means you could just have 4 units with Skeleton Bombers, and 3 of them have boost. So, beautiful, right there. All very good. And 3 of them also have 12k base, so awesome. Next up, 4 copies of the countercharger I was talking about earlier. Punching Frangol. Act rearguard circle once per turn, counterblast 1 and soul blast 2, and call a card from your drop zone or rearguard circle. If you called Kicking Frangol, the guy who from before was on place, get +4, countercharge 1 and soul charge 1. So, kind of hefty cost. You may be wondering why this is ran. A lot of units in this deck, if you haven't known, well, okay, good amount, require cards in drop zone. So what you do here is, let's just go back a bit. You just play like Skeleton Sharpshooter in a middle of your deck. You play a Norman the Ghosty every now and then what you do is you fill up your drop zone, right, for cards like Commodore Blue Blood or Skeleton Bomber, or maybe even this thing if you don't really have a choice. And what you do is you activate this card to get those cards back from your drop zone to either get another Norman out just to mill more cards, or maybe you want to call out Frangol to hit numbers, or maybe you want to call out Commodore to hit even more numbers. Who knows? Who really cares? You could get a free booster out of this. You could really get anything out of this, and then you could possibly get a counter charge and soul charge out of it. So, really useful, all-around balanced card, and can give you good amount of resources. So I suggest running it at 4, no matter how many copies of this boy you run. Okay, next up to grade 3s. 4 copies of Witch Doctor of Treachery, Negro Breach. Skill, continuous vanguard or rearguard circle. During your turn, if your drop zone has 10 or more cards, it gets +10 to end of, it gets +10. So that's really useful. That's already a 22k base. It can hit force numbers as long as they don't get a damage trigger. It can hit excel numbers. It can hit protect numbers. All you have to do is just have 10 or more cards in drop. This deck can do it easily. Throw in like 3 Normans and then 1 Alpha, or whatever the first countercharger was, and then you already have the 10 cards right there. And then the skill that you kind of run them for, but you really run them for the first skill, but the skill you run them for only for that one-up situation. Act, drop zone, counterblast 2, call this card to rear guard, and then if your Vanguard is grade 2 or greater and was not placed this turn, you may write this card as stand instead. It has a gift. You would only run this. Well, you would only use this effect, because it's counterblast 2, which is kind of hefty in this deck. You would only use this is if you're grade locked. But good news is, if you're grade locked, you don't really have to worry because just pay Counterblast 2 and then just rev this thing from Drop Zone. So it's not that bad. It kind of sucks to lose Counterblast 2, but it's fine when this plus 10k for 10 cards in Drop Zone thing is on Vanguard Circle as well, so it's not really a problem. And even if you can't ride it, you still get an extra rear guard. It's like a cheaper version of Skull Dragon Undead Dragon. Just really harder to use, but who cares? Extra plus 10k matters. And then finally, the Ace Grade 3, who looks really cool, and we all cannot wait for his real form to show up in the next few months or so. Master Swordsman Nightstorm. Skill, auto Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. When placed, put the top 2 cards of your deck into your drop zone, and this unit gets plus 5 till end of turn. So already 17k base when being placed. So once more, as long as the opponent doesn't get a damage trigger, it can hit force numbers, it can hit excel and protect magic numbers. So yeah, pretty much all useful card right there. And then the second skill, it also gets plus, and then it gets the cards in drop zone. And then auto Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. When it attacks a Vanguard, if your drop zone has 10 or more cards, Counterblast 1, draw 1. Okay, that's useful. That's extremely useful. Yes, drawing may or may not put you close to decking out, but this deck can easily get out 10 cards instead of drop zone. If you can't do that, then you probably bricked like all triggers and like the Negro Breach, the only card in the deck that can't mill. But it's still really useful. It gets you that extra draw, which could end up being a really useful hand card, or like just PG fodder with the Protect gift, or it can just be useful all around because on plays get plus 5 just by milling 2 cards. You don't have to pay a Counterblast or a Soul Blast for it. It's just free mill, which is awesome because no cost for it equals best. Also, like I said before, get your resources, get your possibilities, get your options, everything. So yeah, main grade 3, 4 copies. Now onto the gifts. 4 copies of Imaginary Gift Protect 1. When acquired, add it to your hand, yada yada yada. Sentinel, that means you can only run 4 on the deck to an extent. And then auto Guardian Circle. When placed, discard a hand card. One of your units cannot be hit till the end of the battle. That is useful because, like, say you're being hit for a big number. You know, let's just jump all the way back to Valkyria. You know, that card that can get possible Content Drive, has 70k base. That rams into you. You have enough to guard for like a 1 to pass, but at the same time you have this in hand. You ain't gonna guard for a 1 to pass unless you're that ballsy when he has Quintet Drive. Just throw the PG out and save yourself, because the PG is gonna stop hell. Unlike how the effing 1 to pass probably is gonna fail because Quintet Drive is gonna kill you. But yeah, honestly, like a good card. It's a free PG. That's why you don't really run PGs in this deck besides this. So 4 copies of it. It's like 5 cents on this exact version. It's like 25 or 5 cents on TCG. And then finally, the last card in the very last gift, Imaginary Gift, Protect 2. So then 4 copies of it to match out the 8 gifts, because you're only supposed to have 8 gifts. Skill, when acquired, when put this card on a rearguard circle, the unit on this circle gets plus 5 at all times. So that's useful. Like, say you were to put a Nightstorm on it, that's a permanent 17k base. Or like, say you were to put a I'm trying to think of a unit here, Commodore Blue Blood. During your turn, it's at a total of, I forgot the numbers. It's at 18, but then during your opponent's turn, it's at 14. So that's awesome. It just boosts the numbers. And then when the card intercepts, it gets plus 10k shield. So as long as you put it on a grade 2 or a unit that has intercept, it could be useful because that's just a free 10k shield right there. So it's a guaranteed 15k guard at the very least. And that affects stacks too, so it can be like plus 10k power and plus 10 and plus 20k shield. It can just be all types of numbers. Just be smart with it. But yeah, that was the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said earlier, don't forget to comment on what deck you guys want next. Don't forget to like, and don't forget to subscribe to Dev's channel, Simply Bored. All you have to do is just click the subscribe button somewhere around here. And if you want to go subscribe to my channel, go on YouTube and look up Vanity Ezel. Yeah. So then, bye.